Noor Bin Ladin, as usual, anchors our coverage from Davos. Noor, you're out at the ski resort with all the elites. Of course, Daily Mail's telling us it's nothing but hookers, champagne, caviar, big parties. What's going on there?
As for the Daily Mail article, to put it bluntly, these people that gather here in Davos every year, I would qualify them as degenerate criminals who are posturing as benefactors for humanity and think they have any form of sophistication because they get their suits, at Savile Row and they have access to private jets. But at the end of the day, these people that are here are actually the lowest of the lowest who pretend that they're trying to do something for the world, but they are not. And this is what we're going to talk about throughout this week with this World Economic Forum annual meeting and all the panels that they have prepared for us.
Noor, help me out here. You've been there for the Great Reset, for the Build Back Better. Every year they got a theme. Last year they dropped artificial intelligence. I think there's a Citicorp analysis out today that says 40% of current jobs are going to be wiped out in the next couple of years because of AI. 40%, principally administrative and computer science, and that women are going to take the biggest hit of that, women and minorities. The theme this year, correct me if I'm wrong, is rebuilding trust. Is the Davos man understand that they are now under the microscope by a global populist nationalist movement and people are not buying it? So their theme this year is rebuilding trust?
Absolutely, you are correct. The theme is rebuilding trust. It is quite ironic, but I don't know if you can see on the screen, I'm also standing in front of one of the houses, and the title here is Deciding Your Tomorrow. So they want to rebuild trust in order to decide our tomorrow, but they have done a really, really terrible job. And rebuilding trust, I mean, what trust? All they do is lie. And if you look at their agenda, it's lie after lie after lie. Climate change, pandemics, Russia hoax, January 6th, all the different narratives that they try to push out of this forum and all the different vehicles that assist the World Economic Forum and with whom they collaborate, like the UN, like the WHO, all the media entities, they're all part of this infrastructure that has been set up over decades in order to push this one world government agenda. And this is what we're going to be talking about here this week. And so they want to rebuild trust for the public because they've lost so much of the trust with COVID-19. A lot of us have been awakened over the past few years, the past few decades, to what it is they're actually trying to do. And they can hide it behind all these lofty terms and their nomenclature, trying to pretend, as I said, that they are benefactors in the world, where in fact, when you really look what is behind the agenda that they are rolling out, they are in fact enemies of humanity, and we will be exposing all of their misdeeds that they are trying to do here in Davos.
If summarize, is their focus still anti-sovereignty? They're trying to take away sovereignty, not just of nation states, but also the citizens of those nation states?
They want to abolish the Westphalian system of the nation state. Absolutely. This is what this organization is about. And as I mentioned, all the other organizations that work hand in hand with them. People need to understand that it's been almost 200 years, but predominantly throughout the 20th century, that this architecture has been set up with the WEF as a center point for the past 50 years, through which they are rolling out this agenda. And the WEF, just like the WHO, has been selected as the vehicle of choice to roll out the health aspect, the health component, the health pretext to enslave us through the digitization of healthcare and these so-called pandemics. The WEF has been selected as the vehicle of choice for what they call the public-private partnerships. And what this means is that we have governments, public entities that are working hand in hand with corporations in order to advance the agenda. And when for example, the population is giving pushback to certain government policies that trickle down from the globalist agenda, because all of our governments have been captured and answer to this globalist elite, then they use the corporations to make their services and products ubiquitous in a way that we cannot function in society unless we use them. And obviously the smartphone is one of the great examples where today in society you can barely function unless you use these digitized these services to reach you use these devices to use these digitized services. It's important to understand and to realize that what is happening in the United States of America is inextricably linked to what is going on here. And for the little anecdote, I was in a coffee shop earlier today, and in hushed tones at the table next to mine, this lady with 3 other men who were talking business, obviously at some point, brought up Donald J. Trump, our great president. And she said, can you imagine if President Trump gets reelected and gets back to the White House, how disastrous that would be? And the people around her were obviously in agreement, including this one ex-CNN guy. So President Trump is not even here, but everybody has President Trump on their mind because, as you know, in 2008, he actually came here to Davos and gave an incredible speech where he clearly stated that the agenda for the American people had to be America first, and that actually it should be the case for every single nation. And what the Davos people fear the most is the America first MAGA agenda. It is the one thing that stands in the way of them realizing their goal for a one world government, for the Great Reset, for this centralized government where nation states would simply be provinces in the socialist system. And that is why it is really important to follow parallel to what is going on in the US, what is going on here in Switzerland, which, hosts so many of these organizations. And to give you an example, Steve, of how all these dots connect. So the WEF came out with their global risks report last week, and they came out with this chart, this table with the 10 different most important risks for the next 2 years and as well the next 10 years. The number one risk for the next 2 years is misinformation and disinformation. And we're going to have several panels this week on this subject, including one panel entitled Defending Truth, another one, Protecting Democracy Against Bots and Plots, and lastly, 4.2 billion people at the ballot box, a panel which will have Alex Soros, which includes Alex Soros. And at the same time, in the US, 5 days ago, CNBC held an event with FBI Director Christopher Wray and Paul Nakasone, US Cyber Commander, NSA Director, and Central Security Service Chief General, on how the FBI and the NSA are preparing for deep fakes and misinformation ahead of the 2024 elections. So all of this is going on at the same time on different tracks, but the agenda is the same. And so all of these quote leaders in the US of all these different agencies and institutions and the politicians are in perfect lockstep with the people that are actually here this week in Davos. And you do have a few members of the US delegation that are here. So we're going to hear from John Kerry, who is speaking on 6 different panels in his capacity as climate czar, which was announced, he's stepping down from in order to help Biden in his re-election campaign. We're going to have Jake Sullivan. We're going to have Anthony Blinken, who are going to be talking about, their quote expertise on foreign policy, no doubt, on 2 different special addresses. So you have several people here from the US who will be participating in the annual meeting. And essentially what's the word? It starts with it, colluding with the Davos quote elite that have descended here
Yes.
for the annual meeting this week. So there will be lots to discuss. But just to come back on that table of risks, it's worth really looking at, because even though they hide the agenda behind these terms that want to convey some sort of benefit for humanity, I can give you actually the titles of the 4 key themes for this year: achieving security and cooperation in a fractured world, creating growth and jobs for a new era, AI as a driving force for the economy and society, and lastly, a long-term strategy for climate, nature, and energy. So these are the official themes for this year. But looking back at that table of risks and these 10 points, that is actually the real agenda of what they want to implement. So they say they're fighting misinfo and disinfo, but they're actually the greatest purveyors of misinformation and disinformation.
Yes.
They are talking about extreme weather events. But what extreme weather events? It's made up because they're also using climate change as the Trojan horse for the agenda. Societal polarization. If there is polarization in society, it is because of what they are doing with their different policies and the manipulation with the media. I'm not going to list all of them, obviously, but one important one, which ties into the entire theme of your show today: involuntary migration. Migration isn't involuntary. They are leading the charge of importing all of these people in the Western world, because it is one of the big parts of how they're undermining the sovereignty of Western nations through this deliberate invasion that is going on both in Europe and the United States. The Great Replacement is not a conspiracy theory. It is a fact, and it is happening right now.